Welcome, everyone, to the Northland Post Message Podcast, where we take a little bit of time each week, sit down and look at the previous week's message and go a little deeper. Today, it's going to be me and Dave together, and we've started a new series this last week called Stuck in My Head. And so just right up front, I want to take a little bit of time and just remind you what this series is about. So we've decided to take songs from our culture and match them up with psalms from the scriptures. And a lot of times songs in our culture are asking questions about life, questions about who we are, questions about who God is and how he interacts with the world. And so just like there are various different types of genres of music, there are various different types of genres of psalms. Yeah. And so this last week we looked at a type of psalm, which is a type of surrender, is a particular type of psalm we looked at. And we used a fun song, Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve, which is classic, 1997, for those wondering, 1997. And Dave, you brought up how Paul did this all the time in culture. He would take certain phrases of Greek philosophers or wherever he was around, and he would use that to help spread the message about who God is.
Yeah. It's actually quite interesting. Paul was somebody who, while he was Jewish, grew up in Tarshish. Is that Tarsus? Tarshish? I can't remember exactly how to say it. I always get it wrong when I'm trying to say
Tarshish,
it.
Yeah.
And so he had a background in a Greek culture as well, and so he's very well versed and probably one of the smartest guys who could blend both the culture, and that's why he's literally described as an apostle to the Gentiles. Yeah. And so God was going to use him and his abilities, and he would go into different cultures, and he would spend time wherever they're at, and he could quote their poets, he could quote their prophets, the people that everybody else knew. He knew something about their culture, and then he always tried to tie that back into like, hey, that's pointing towards something. It's almost there. It's in the right direction, but maybe you've gotten to the wrong conclusion about what that looks like. And so it's brilliant. It's often, if you don't see that, because you just see like a little footnote and you say, oh, that's just a little E next to that. And you don't see the footnote saying, oh, in Mars Hill, that was a Greek philosopher, Epiphanes or something like that. Right, you're like, I didn't actually notice that. But yeah, he was quoting from people that were just in their culture, people that they would have known. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's super, super cool. I mean, I'll say this, we're not the first ones to kind of have this idea of taking songs and finding, there's been other series from churches, particularly calling like Finding God in the Music or Finding God on Your iPod. This is something people have been doing for a long time. So that idea for church world is not actually new or unique to us, but it's been cool to think about doing this with the Psalms, because the Psalms really are like the songbook of the Bible in a way. It would have been the songbook of Israel. And these Psalms are just full of poetry, full of a lot of the lyrical ideas that we would find in songs today. Yeah. And in fact, a lot of times modern worship songs are written from the Psalms. Yeah. It's a really cool thing. So before we dig into a lot about specifically last week's message, I want to just spend a few moments having a little fun. So I want to know, what are some of your all-time favorite songs?
And I'll say this. This is what I love. Is sometimes having fun is also a part of church. Absolutely. And I think people just forget that we can have fun. We can enjoy a bit of that. And I saw that this week on stage. And so you and another guy got up on stage and had a little fun just singing. And you do this every week. Actually, you do it more with worship, but to be able to cover songs, do other things, it is fun. So if you're asking me, I'm going to say this. When it comes to music, I'm not necessarily your number one guy here, okay? I am one of those unique guys who just listens a little bit more than cares. And there are songs I really like, but I kind of have a lot of genres. And so it depends on what day of the week it is most of the time for me. And you could walk in here and you would see I might be playing a big band symphony, like it happens sometimes, like jazz and big band. Other times I'm in, I don't know what you'd call it, but like more of a lower rock session. Do a lot of country. So we have kind of a natural thing on Thursdays.
Yep, I was going to bring it up if you didn't.
There's something about country music that makes me want to relax a little bit. And Thursday's my last day of the week, and I'm just like throwing on some Zac Brown band. It's probably my favorite band to listen to, and they just have a ton of songs that I just somehow identify with, or they remind me. In fact, about a year ago, I was going through all the songs that I liked, and I said to my sons, I said, "Hey, y'all need to get this playlist ready just in case I die sometime." Okay. And so they made a playlist for like, just in case Dad goes down, he wants this. And I'm going to say probably half of those songs are by Zac Brown Band. So that's probably my bread and butter there. So yeah. What about you?
If anyone knows Zac Brown on the podcast today, an appearance at Dave's funeral would be...
That's right. That's all I need. It'd be great.
Oh, man. If anybody has spent any amount of time with me, Steve Johnson being one of those people in particular, we would all know that I am probably the world's biggest U2 fan.
Oh, yeah.
I think I've mentioned this from the stage before, actually. I would vouch to say this is the greatest rock band of all time, even though someone would argue, is it rock? And it is. It's absolutely rock. In fact, I didn't think of U2 as such a rock band. I liked a lot of Joshua Tree stuff and, some of kind of the more mellow stuff. And so I'm thinking when Caitlin and I got an opportunity about, it's been about almost 10 years ago to go see U2. I was thinking, this is going to be just a good concert. It's going to be, probably even a little emotional at some points of just, some of the songs. And I just, until that moment of seeing them in person, I was like, no, this is the most amazing rock band of all time. Oh. They rocked it. I mean, they rocked it. But I wasn't mad about that. I was like, this was amazing. I see why people love this band so much. But yeah, I love their stuff. So that's probably 9 times out of 10 what's rolling. I've got several actually playlists depending on, if I want more of their just rock stuff or, more of their kind of serious stuff.
Do they have a certain day of the week where you're like, this, and this, or no?
No. I just kind of whatever I feel in the moment. But that's probably my favorite. But I like all kinds of music. I do listen to country quite a bit. I love a good just country song that's well written. That just, kind of plays on words or whatever. Brad Paisley's got a new EP out. It's nothing but that. And I love it. It's older sounding country, which is the best. And then he just does what he does. But I'm probably more of a new music guy as far as I'm the kind of the person that's always telling people, have you heard this song? Have you heard this song?
Yeah.
Showing new music. Aaron Pinner and I are constantly sending each other new music all the time, almost every day. And so I do have a lot of things that kind of hold true, but definitely I'm always kind of what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And so
I'm the opposite of that. It takes me.
Most people are.
It does. It takes me at least 2 or 3 times to hear a song to okay. Maybe I like that. And then somewhere down the road, a year later, I'm like, you know what? I do like that song. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But up front, it's a no for every new song I listen to.
There's actually a guy I need to show you. He's written some country songs. He's probably my absolute favorite songwriter in the world. His name is Foy Vance, and he's an Irish guy.
Oh, okay.
And so it's a little bit folky too, most of his music. But he's written a couple songs. One of them, Keith Urban, actually put on one of his albums and stuff. So he's kind of got a little bit of a country flair in there too. Yeah. I'll just show you. You'll really like him. But anyway, anybody listening, Foy Vance is amazing. I've seen him in person too. So yeah, that would be my top. Jonathan, if Jonathan was in on this conversation, and maybe he will be at some point, but he would say Need to Breathe is one of his top bands, and Jonathan and I connect heavy on Need to Breathe.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into the message today. This week, of course, was about surrender. It was about giving things over to God. And we went from the vantage point of Psalm 37 and, of course, the song Bittersweet Symphony. And so up front, you kind of brought this idea about we can have, and I'm sorry, I just lost my note completely on here, right observation, but the wrong conclusion.
Right. Yeah.
Right observation. Let's talk a little more about that.
So I think this is a common thought process in the world, and that's what we wanted to expose in some of these songs was maybe there's an observation that is right, that you feel these things, there's real kind of realities. Sometimes, you feel stuck. You feel like, for this particular song that we were looking at, there's a feeling of trying to be a million different people from one day to the next, and that's just how it is, and you're stuck in this mold, and things don't change. And, that's at times it could look like the right observation. I could do this personally in my life. I could look around and say, man, it seems like the bad guys always do win, or, and sometimes they do. Sometimes they do have an opportunity to do that. Maybe something isn't fair. That's a right observation. We live in a world that's not fair. But does that mean that we would then translate that into the right conclusion, which means this world isn't fair? Well, actually, if you go a little step further into the spiritual realms and you start looking at it from the vantage point of a spiritual kind of mindset, you would say, no, God brings balance to the scales of justice ultimately. And so what you see in this world may not be what is true for the rest of eternity. And I think that's where we sometimes lose sight of it. Maybe somebody gets ahead in the world and you think they don't deserve it. But in reality, in the kingdom, Jesus comes and flips everything upside down and says, I think you're thinking about this the wrong way. You think, it's about position or power or money or any one of these things. And he says things like, no, it's actually those who are the least in the kingdom who will be the greatest. It's those who come to the table, whatever table, and they'd have these settings where they would set people in certain spots on the table. And the closest to the actual host of a party or banquet was the most prominent people. And so if you felt like you were somebody, you would go sit there. And Jesus says, go sit in the last place. Don't worry about that. And then let the person say, no, you don't belong there. Let them move you up. But don't come and sit in the best place and say, no, we actually have somebody else, and move you down on it. Yeah. Jesus flips the script in so many different ways, all the way to the Beatitudes. And that's one example I gave. Jesus is quoting Psalm 37 in one of those Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. I learned that this week. I was reading through that, and I was like, I didn't realize Jesus. When I read that, I was like, Jesus quoted this, and I've never seen that's really cool. The quote next to it. But everything he says is kind of it's a right observation, wrong conclusion, meaning you are poor in spirit, but that doesn't mean that's where you're going to stay. You are hungry or you thirst, but that's not exactly what God has in store for you.
That's so good.
All of those things are right observations, but you could conclude that you're just going to be poor, or you're just going to be someone who's sad, or just all these things, and that God doesn't care about you. Maybe that's the biggest conclusion we make. That is not true. And Psalm 37 says that.
Yeah, I think about Paul saying, the things I do, I don't want to do. The things I want to do, I don't do. That kind of caught up in that. I hear that in this song a little bit. I'm just I'm a million different people from one. It's not necessarily like he's boasting in that. It's a little bit of a help.
That's really good.
It really is a cry for that. And so in the same way, I don't think Paul is boasting in the fact that, I'm a mixed up, bag of marbles here. He's admitting it. It's the the right observation. I think it's great. The right observation is, I'm a sinner. I'm not don't have it all together. I'm striving here. I'm trying. But the wrong conclusion is that it will always be this way. And I love what you brought in about Beatitudes. I think that's so powerful. Because not only for us to see that about ourselves, but also to see other people in that way too.
Oh yeah.
Am I seeing the poor as less? Am I seeing the meek as less? Am I seeing, these other as less? because that may be the right observation in the moment, but is it the, the conclusion I need to have about them basically from a kingdom perspective? And so,
yeah, it's that old adage that people say, and I never brought this together until just right now, but like you can't judge a book by its cover, right? Like there are people in life that go through things, are experiencing things. Maybe they look one way, but man, once you dive in, you're going to find out maybe something different.
Yeah. Well, the really cool thing you brought up this week was the acrostic, the letters, the Hebrew letters that go through this psalm. And so I want to just kind of spend a little bit more time. Maybe we could dive into a few more of them that you didn't maybe get to, or if you could, or something, however you want to take this forward. But I just wanted to learn more about it.
Yeah, as you go through the book of Psalms and any type of Hebrew poetry, so there's going to be a bunch of different books that are out there. There's Job, Lamentations. A lot of the prophets are written in a poetic way. Mm. And what we see in our Bibles are these indentions. We find different indentions. We see things, and we don't think twice about it. We just know that they're kind of there, but they're not written in the same way as, let's say, a Old Testament narrative where you see no indentions. It's just paragraphs, and people kind of go through line for line. But those indentions mean something, and there's more in the Hebrew, if you were to watch it or see it, than there is in the English version. As you translate it, you just don't see it the same way. And so one of the things that they love to do was just kind of take and create some different forms of poetry. And one of the key ones is a chiastic poetry. So in a chiasm, that means they're going to take like a set of letters like A, B, C, and then they're going to go backwards and do B, C, A afterwards. And so it's like this. And if you see it, then the emphasis in that particular poem is the C in that. So the C would be they're kind of halfway through, and you get this like, oh, and you kind of see it building almost like a crescendo into that. Yeah. And then it's backing through it in a different way. And so that's a beautiful expression of poetry. One that David probably likes as much as a chiasm is an alphabetical acrostic. And so in an alphabetical acrostic, which we talked about this week, they're going to go through each one of the stanzas are going to go through and start with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And so when you would be reading this, if you're reading it for the first time, you would see this, and you would see it naturally on the paper, and you'd be like, oh, wow. He went through each letter to start each one of these different stanzas. And that means he didn't just write this from a quick standpoint. He took time. He thought about each and every word. And so you go through these, and again, you start with the A and the B, and then the G is what we said was the third letter, and then D, Delth. And so you're walking through the different letters. And there's 22, so he's going to go 22. And so in Psalm 37, if you look at it, there's these different indentions, and there should be 22 different indentions. And what it does is it signifies a level of depth that he wanted to have. For me, in the English alphabet, I have to get to places like Q. What do I got to say for Q? Or some of these other letters where you don't quite think of a word to start. But he's sitting there, and my guess is he's praying about that. And it was just a sign of there's great depth into each one of these words. Yeah. And I love that about our Bible. I think it's lost on us sometimes in the English translations. I'm not a Hebrew scholar. I don't know a lot of Hebrew scholars, but my guess is if you were, you could sit down and you just sit there and think, oh, this is beautiful to see it laid out like this. Probably the most known psalm in our Bible, with the same kind of alphabetical acrostic is Psalm 119, the longest chapter of our Bible. If you were to go through that, the same thing. It would be, okay, each one of those sections of that is built around this. And it turns out to be a psalm that if you read it, I think it takes about 15 minutes to read. Yeah. Imagine the amount of time it would have taken to write that. And anybody who would be reading this would say, man, what a beautiful expression of depth in poetry. So I love it. I appreciate it. I don't always see it or understand it because it's somewhat lost on me. But I think it's good for us to see that when we open up our Bibles and say, oh, those aren't just indentions. Oftentimes they point towards an author who's being very poetic in nature.
Yeah. It's a really cool deal. I mean, as someone who is, an artist, and I say that with the most humility I can. It is what it is. It's what I do. I see people who put this kind of effort into things in our own world, and you notice it, and you go, oh, look at what they did. Look at how they intentionally put that together. Like I was saying a while ago, with a quippy country song, it's like, oh, that took a lot of thought to make that idea connect to this idea or this play on words or whatever. But in doing so, it emphasizes what they're trying to say in the song. Mm-hmm. It creates a feeling within you, which is actually probably the most important part, is that an artist is trying to make you feel something as much as they're trying to just convey information. I mean, if David was writing this psalm and he just wanted to convey the information, there was a whole lot easier way to do it.
That's right. Yeah.
But the most effective way, the way to make us feel it the most, was to do it in this poetic, beautiful way. Mm-hmm. I hear it all the time. People come up to me at church and they go, "Man, music, it just does something. It just connects with me." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's that's what it is. It's beautiful." And to think that God created something so amazing that we get to participate in, but it's a straight to the heart feeling type of thing most of the time that connects with a space within us that just general knowledge or information isn't going to connect with right away.
Right.
And so it's really cool to see that and how that plays out.
Don't you think there's a side of God that's represented in that level of poetry and artistry? Do you see that as like a chance to go back and say there's something to learn about our God in this way? That's kind of what I think through. If you were to go even to the first page of your Bible, Genesis chapter 1, and you read that, we want to read it from a historical standpoint. We want to read it as a linear discussion. But when you go back to Genesis 1, again, you see the indentions there. The actual Bible starts with poetry. The first 7 days are described in a poetic way. And it tells us the story of God, and it also tells us who God is. There's a complexity. There's a depth. There is a beautiful symphony. We'll use those two together, right? That comes with our God that can be lost on us, and I think is more lost on a Western mindset than it was on the Eastern mindset. And when you think through that, we're now in an age where we don't think that way. We're so linear. And we forget that our God is not always that way. Sure, there are things that matter, but he's very poetic, and there's a level of depth to everything he's writing, everything he's doing, everything we see and experience in this world. And so I go back to like Genesis 1 whenever I have to think about that. Like the very opening pages of our Bible are written. Now, this is a chiasm, so it's actually written in a chiastic way, but it's another incredible poem in the very beginning. And that's why most every translation starts with one line and then indentions, okay? Yeah. Pay attention to those. All of that matters from a hermeneutical standpoint, but it also matters in the way that we see our God. And so when we're doing this, we're talking about this, or we're even talking about people from different parts of culture who are speaking into this. Those are all people made in the image of God. And so this expression of art makes sense if you think, man, we're somewhat hardwired to think in this way, whether we believe or not. It's going to be a part of what we are. And that's why I think we're drawn towards those things. It's like, well, that's a part of how I think God created us, to be drawn towards that poetry or that song or that art that is beautiful.
Yeah. I think about, maybe you've heard this expression before, this idea of the 18-inch journey between our head and our heart. But there's apparently roughly 18 inches between your brain and your heart.
Okay.
And, And so there's several different plays on that at different places that use that terminology. But the main idea is just that I think there are things that we want to know in our head sometimes that our heart experiences, but our head doesn't quite make sense of it yet.
Right.
And I think that is perfectly on design. Is that God can be speaking to us about something and revealing something to us that we begin to grasp in our heart. But maybe we can't put it into words yet, or maybe we can't know the right ways to think about it. And I mean, if you think, I talk to a lot of people about this all the time. They're like, I don't know how to say it. I'm one of those people. I don't know how to put this in words. I don't know how to, but there's something just going on in my heart. I think about, Cleopas and the other disciple on the road to Emmaus in Acts, and how they get to a certain point where Jesus is explaining everything to them, and they stop for dinner, and then Jesus breaks the bread. And this, if you don't know about this story, by the way, go read it. It's amazing. Sorry, it's not in Acts. It's in the end of Luke, the last chapter of Luke. You didn't correct me. You should have corrected me, Dave.
I'm slow. Okay.
It is morning. We normally do these in the afternoon. It is morning. But they get to a certain point and they sit down and Jesus breaks the bread. He disappears, which is awesome, amazing. But in that moment, they realize this is Jesus. His identity was hidden before. They realize who he is, but then they say, "Did not our hearts burn within us?" Mm-hmm. Yeah. We should have known. We didn't know, but we should have known by the way our heart was burning. Yeah. And I think that's the idea, is that there's something within this that begins to move in our heart before we can even begin to process and make sense of it with our head. And that's a great thing. That's a God thing. Yeah. And it begins revealing and calling us and wooing us towards him in that way. Man, we could talk a lot.
Oh man, I got like 5 other things in my mind right now. But yeah, we probably need to keep moving to the actual message. Yeah.
Yeah. One aspect of this series that we're kind of, and I don't know that this was maybe as apparent this week, but we always every year spend a little bit of time talking about mental health. And so one idea of this series is that each of these weeks will kind of help address some mental battles as well.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I think about the idea of surrender, and the opposite of surrender is we're trying to control. We're trying to maintain it on our own. And predominantly the thing that brings up the most, I believe, would be anxiety. You did talk about anxiety this week, and talked about, I like the idea of the Kindle thing, and how, we get Kindle, something kindles us.
What was that word for fret in the Hebrew is a kindling. It's something that gets moved, and he keeps saying over and over again, do not fret. We don't say that word as much. We would say, hey, don't be afraid, don't worry, or somebody might say, or don't be so anxious about something. But the same terminology is a little bit different. But fret would be the word that says, don't be so kindled like a fire and ready to burn in this way. Yeah.
So I want to just spend this next few minutes just kind of talking through how this psalm, what God calls us to be as Christians, but to how this helps us within our anxiety. How this helps us. We probably live in one of the most anxious worlds and anxious times as ever, just due to the fact that we're plugged into everything all the time. But how does this address that?
In one way, this psalm speaks into what I think is maybe one of the driving forces for some people, and that is the comparison. It goes from the very beginning. It says, "Do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong." And so at some level, he is saying, hey, when you're looking around at the rest of life, when you're spending time so focused on all those other things, you're going to get something inside of you that happens. And I think this happens for us when we start to look around, we play the comparison game, we start becoming more and more envious of things or downplaying who we are. And then we get overwhelmed by the fact that we may even be worse. And it starts to build up inside of us. And so we mentioned it was either anger or anxiety were the two things that come up. And whenever you start comparing. And people do get overly kindled or overwhelmed, especially when their focus starts to be on other things and not on God.
Yeah. I think that's so good. I mean, I've heard it said in the middle of anxiety is I. But that's a good point too. Is it's one of the two, or probably both, or maybe even the root of that really still is focusing on myself. But when I'm focusing on others in comparison to myself, that's the connection there maybe. But at the root of it, it is a misaligned focus. It's a misaligned. I like to think of it too as control. We talked several times. It was said this week: control loop. And that's something I identify heavily with. Is I want to control things around me, right. To a unhealthy point many times, which creates this anxiety within myself.
Yeah, you almost want to control. And I said this: your future, your relationships, your kids, your health, your finances, your reputation, political things. You want to control how the world should run. And when you start trying to grab onto that, you feel a certain weight to that, and it builds up. It makes it harder and harder, and then you get overwhelmed by it. And the more you grab onto, the more it somewhat feels like you're going to lose control. Yeah. And it's a tough one. It's a really tough one. I don't claim to have an answer to it. I do think our culture is so saturated with this term that I think it's one of those things that gets put on repeat in our minds as well. So as we talk about anxiety, one of the things I've noticed is that it's in most every song at some level, and it's brought up and like I'd say it's more romanticized in some ways. Like, hey, anxiety is an okay thing, and so people use it so much in different settings that I think it becomes something that you repeat so often that you just all of a sudden default to it. But like we said, there was words that people used when they felt something building up inside of them, and it wasn't always anxiety. And I think sometimes we mislabel some things. This word was fret. I think a word that I use sometimes, I feel angst. That's not anxiety. It just means I feel something coming in the middle of whatever it is. That's okay. That's all right. You can feel angst and whatever's happening. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody the other day. I was like, there's a level of how you are trained to think and feel so that you respond, meaning I believe it's your amygdala on the front side of your brain. And I'm not like a doctor or anything, so I'm not going to put myself there, but is designed to be able to share fight or flight modes. And so you're walking down the road and you see a grizzly bear and you feel something. That's good.
Yeah, great.
It says, hey, there's danger in front of you. If you put your hand over fire and you feel pain, you should feel like, oh man, that's probably unsafe. It's a protective mechanism, but when it's fully kind of focused on all the time, and it becomes something that you just, I think you just default to. And so I do think we have a very saturated culture of anxiety, and everybody is talking about it, making us all even a bit more anxious.
Yeah. There's a guy that I follow. I've read several of his books. His name is Chuck DeGroat. He is a clinical psychologist, but he's also a pastor. Yeah. And primarily does a lot of work within the church as far as helping with mental health in that matter. But he talks about how we are still responsible. Like you may deal with certain things within yourself, but ultimately you have to, once you know about that, then it becomes your responsibility to own up to that, to own up to the things you do. Like you can't blame everything that you do on this. Well, I have this anxiety. I have this thing. I have, like at a certain point, as you grow, you have to be able to take responsibility. Yeah. And I think that is one thing we see in our culture a lot of times is, forgive me for this or excuse me for this because I have, this certain diagnosis or this issue or whatever. And some of that is very real. So I'm playing, treading a fine line here. There's certain people that do have certain things, but a lot of times we do see, people who they tend to lean on that. Like I've seen people, they'll do the Enneagram and then they'll just like lean hard in on
they
it.
just
Like,
always say, this is who I am.
I'm a 6. This is who I am. And it's like, no, the whole purpose of that is to help you see your negative coping patterns and make adjustments. And that's, that really and truly, that's the whole idea of mental health help in the beginning, is to help you see where you've negatively done this. And now you need to, make these adjustments. And so,
I do like that. I like how Max Lucado, I go back to this quote when people talk about this, and he says that the presence of anxiety is unavoidable, but the prison of anxiety is avoidable.
Yeah.
And that's why our Bible doesn't like dance around this term too much. It'll just say, as it says right here in Genesis or in Psalm 37, do not fret. Or in Philippians 4, do not be anxious about anything.
Right.
They don't dance around it and be like, "Hey, that's an okay thing." No, this is a real issue, and you don't need to live this way.
Yeah,
the presence of it might be unavoidable. We're going to feel some level of angst, anxiety, worry. All those things are going to happen in our lives, but the prison that can be avoidable.
Yeah, and I think it is dangerous when you mentioned this week, and this was so powerful. The idea of sometimes we don't want to let it go because we're more comfortable holding on to it.
Yeah,
and I think that is hard to hear, but really so true. Of maybe there have been some things in my life that I've been stuck in this space because I'm still trying to hold on to it. Mm-hmm. I'm actually more comfortable living with it than I am with the rest. You and I have had this conversation. I tend to be a little bit more of an anxious presence. And that's, something I'm working on. But, in that, I do well busy. I do well with a lot on my plate sometimes. Yeah, and then you get to those halting moments. I'll take the week of camp, for instance. It is full blast all week and it's pressure. And I have a love-hate relationship with that kind of pressure. Right. But then I get to Saturday and I'm like, I'm just sitting and I have no responsibility and nobody needs me. And, and that sometimes takes a toll on me. It's uncomfortable. And so, I think there is a real reality to being able to let things to go and just actually enter into rest. And I think the New Testament, that's a big highlight of what Jesus has brought to us and offers us, is to enter into his rest. Right. And to learn how to do that now. And, that's not just a one day down the road thing that we're going to do when we finally make it home. We need to learn how to enter into his rest now. And so in that we have to release things, let go of things.
Yeah, that line came up. I was just praying about the message, and I still didn't feel confident all weekend long. But so I just kept going and praying. And Sunday morning, I just felt like as I was going through it, like I think people are more comfortable with stress than they are rest. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a line on the screen. I didn't put it in. I just put it down because it felt like that was what God was put on my heart. And it became like this thought that I had that I think did connect with people. And that wasn't from me. I think it was really from the Lord, because I never heard it before, never thought about it before. But people are more comfortable with stress. They're more comfortable with the feelings of all of life on their shoulders. And they complain about it. They say, I don't want this. I don't want that. I got this going on. But as soon as it's lifted off, even for a brief middle time, they feel so uncomfortable. They want it back on there. Mm-hmm. They're much like the Egyptians or the Israelites wanting to go back to the Egyptians. Yeah. Like, I'd like to be set free. Great, we set you free. I'd like to be a slave again, because that feels a whole lot better than being in the desert doing pretty much nothing every day and waiting on God. I don't know if I like that feeling. Well, you're set free from slavery. No, I'd like to go back. Mm. that seems weird until, I've experienced it. It's what I do sometimes. It's like, man, things are kind of a little bit too easy right now. What kind of drama can we stir up around here? My grandpa, I was thinking about that on my way home. My grandpa used to do that from time to time. He's this good old boy living out in the country, and him and grandma, every once in a while, things would be going too well, and he would just do something silly that would just fire her up. I mean, she would be so mad at him, and it would be something stupid, like he'd say something just, I don't know. And I was like, Grandpa, why do you do that? Why do you do that? Like, sometimes you got to keep a little fire in the going. And I'm like, well, I get that. And I laugh about it. And it's true. I mean, it can be true. Things get a little chummy or things. And you're just like, I just need to get my blood pumping again. But then there's other times where you've done that so often that when you get the next thing, that's what puts you over the edge, because you've already put yourself at capacity. Mm-hmm. You've already put yourself in. You'd say you're keeping enough drama in your life. You're right there in the middle of things. You're taking on more stress from work or other things, and then the unexpected thing comes along, and you don't have the capacity for more. And I think that's what Jesus says is like, man, just offload that stress so that you don't have to feel it. Yeah. It'd be the same like in finances. If you've maxed out all of your expenditures, okay, this happens all the time. Same thing. You want things, so you get things. You buy them. All of a sudden, you have debt on debt on debt. Right. And then something goes wrong. Let's say something unexpected. An HVAC goes out, and you're looking at a major expense, and it's like, I can't do that. Actually, it could be a minor expense. It could be like another $500 thing, a new set of tires, and you lose your mind. Mm. What probably should have happened is that years and years ago, or when you had a chance, you could have said no to a few things along the way. Right. And no one ever shares that side of the story. It's always what's happening in the moment. And so I think there's a level of like, when it comes to this stuff, we've got to learn to offload the weight and be ready for whatever else comes our way. That's not always possible. I'm not saying it is always possible. But more often than not, I see people who would rather just keep themselves at capacity or slightly over, and that's why they're so stressed. That's why they're anxious. That's why they get super angry over little things. And I'm saying, why are you angry about that? That's not even a big thing. Right. The rest of their life is so stressed out.
Yeah. I think entering into the rest that God has for us, that Jesus offers us, and living from that place allows us to have margin for when the fires of life come up.
Right.
It allows us to respond in a kingdom way when those things happen. And so one thing I wrote down Sunday morning, I told you this yesterday, I was like, actually this message was for me. If it wasn't for anybody else, it was for me. I'm sitting there listening, going, usually Sunday morning I'm listening, at least one of the services, and but I'm still kind of, okay, are we doing this? We're doing that. And I felt this like holy pause in me Sunday morning listening to the message, because I was like, oh, this is actually hitting me. And I wrote this I write a little prayer each day in my journal. And I wrote, Lord, I have allowed my anxiousness and the heaviness of life to control me. I wrote that Sunday morning at 6 a.m.
Wow.
And
I didn't know this. This is the first time I'm hearing this as well.
And so I want to live from your peace and rest. I want to live whole, conceal me, Lord. And I won't read all this, but I essentially just kind of repent of that. And I just begin thanking God that he graciously allows me to return to that rest. He's always ready for me to do it. And so, it's easy. You're right, to go back to the quick pattern of just, let me control this. Let me handle this. Let me do this. And, but that produces an anxiousness in us that is not from God.
Right.
And so,
Micah, thanks for sharing that. I actually didn't know that, but I love that. And it is affirming, the direction that God's got us on in this time. And people need to know this. We're real people. We might be behind a mic, but we're real people, and God's working on our lives day in and day out. And there's moments where we need to hear something from the Lord, and we pay attention to those moments, and they are important because there's just a lot to that. So if you're looking for some real people, here we are. Yeah. We're trying to figure this stuff out, and we're not just saying this because we've got it figured out. We're saying it because God keeps working on us to help us figure it out.
Absolutely.
And we want to do the very same thing for others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to close today by doing this. And I don't know if we'll do this each week or not, but I just want to kind of read this psalm, but I'm going to read it as a prayer.
Okay. You're going to read all the verses?
I'm going to read, let's see, no, I'm not going to read all the verses. I'm going to read through, let's see, I'll read through 7.
Okay. Let's go.
So this is a prayer for us today. It's going to be a prayer over you. So just take this as God's word over you today. Do not fret because of evildoers. Be not envious towards wrongdoers, for they will wither quickly like the grass and fade like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. Delight yourselves in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will do it. He will bring forth your righteousness as light and your judgment as the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who carries out wicked schemes. And so I just want to repeat that at the beginning of verse 7, rest in the Lord. Mm-hmm. Rest in the Lord. So, amen. Well, if you've listened this far with us today, we're so grateful that you've joined us for this conversation. I am so looking forward to the next couple weeks in this series and just what the various speakers are going to bring with them and just how this is going to just speak to our church. I believe God is speaking to our church through this. And so we're just going to lean in and listen for him. So thanks for joining us today. May the love of the Father, the grace of the Son, Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you. And we'll see you next time.